Good afternoon. We are here at the University of Maine Blueberry Hill Research Station. And this is Dr. Allison Dibble, who has plots and does work on blueberry pollination. Well, Allison, what are we doing out here in the rain in Maine in May?
This is an experiment that looks at the behavior of bees, especially native wild bees, of which Maine has about 265 species. And we're interested in what the bees will do when they're offered flowers of different species of plants. The idea is that in this experiment we have 28 patches, each with a different flowering plant, and over the course of 5 years we're able to look at quite a number of different plants. We switch out some, others stay for the duration of the study.
What are we looking at right in front of us?
This is a shad bush. It's called Amelanchier ulnifolia, and it's a cultivar, regent. It doesn't get very tall, and it's a great favorite of bees on a warm sunny day. It's also related to many native Amelanchier or shadbush species which are in our area. So this is a candidate that a blueberry grower might wish to consider if that person would like to have plantings around the farm that are alternate forage for the same pollinators that also visit Lowbush blueberry. And we then are able to see which bees are coming. We can actually identify them to groups by eye, and we're not capturing them at this stage of the study.
So you can get an idea of what food sources they prefer.
That is the intent. Now, what a farmer might choose to do is then take our lists of what the bees really liked and decide which of those plants the farmer would like to have on his or her own property. And they may wish to create a garden that would have some of these, and it might be in some of the out-of-the-way parts of the farm, perhaps near the house or near the barn, near where the equipment gets stored, someplace a little bit out of the way. Overall, we hope that this would lead to a buildup of the populations of the native wild bees. We have woody plants. We also have some annuals, and we like to compare some fancy cultivars to their, shall we say, their more simple and plain native species that they might be related to. So we're interested in whether the cultivars are losing some of their pollinator resources when they're bred to have more color or something else that people value but that insects may not find as compelling. This is a hole that was 1 meter by 1 meter that we added sand, peat, and a little bit of clay to the backfill, put it back in and mounded it up. We put sticks on it to try to prevent severe erosion if there's a heavy rain. And what we're hoping is that the ground nesting bees will arrive here and create their holes and perhaps make a nest in the prepared spot.
I see. So that the sand, so you want well-drained soil then for them to nest in.
And sunny.
And sunny.
We're interested in demonstrating the types of resources that bees require for nesting. And some of the things that we do are put up nest blocks that leaf cutter bees might use. We also have attempted a ground nesting habitat in a small patch with the idea of build it and they will come. And we have on this farm a berm that is just over here. It was created, about, I'm going to guess about 8 years ago, that is well-drained soil that's been mounded up, and the idea is that ground nesting bees might move into that habitat. So you can see that he did this on purpose. He had the backhoe create a ditch and then put the backfill up to create a sunny, sloping, well-drained patch of bare ground. This is the south, so we've got full sun on this. The size of it is not as important as the fact that it's well drained. Ideally, the soil might have just a little bit of clay in it so that a bee tunnel wouldn't have its sides collapse. This could be one here. And I'm going to suggest that this should be considered. Now, the fact that it's just been raining makes it a little harder to interpret this. This is another. Because if it were drier conditions, we could expect a little pile of loose, fine sand around the hole right at the entrance, and that's the excavation material that the bee has brought out from many repeated trips. And the hole may extend quite some distance into the loose soil. It could go down 18 inches or sometimes much more than that. Some of these have been excavated to more than 4 feet deep. Not every native wild bee would go into this nest, but the intent is that a leafcutter bee might find this very interesting, would explore and go in and lay an egg, seal off, lay another egg, seal off. Each time the egg gets laid, the bee is provisioning it with pollen and nectar that it's bringing from the flowers nearby. You can see that some of these appear to be occupied. This one seems to be especially likely. So this would have been a bee that was here last summer, and it may come out soon and start its work for this year.
So basically you drill holes in these blocks and you're providing a nesting site for them.
Correct. A backyard gardener can do this, and farmers can do it, or you can hire someone to do a bunch of them for you. And then they get hung at about 4, maybe 5 feet above the ground in a sunny location. And sometimes blue jays or woodpeckers will try to get into them, but for the most part they tend to be low maintenance.
Yeah, it seems like a very economical way to get some more pollinators.
Yes. Now the Xerces Society recommends that they be at least 50 feet apart, and you'll see that they are along this fence at intervals. They also recommend that you change them out regularly. They can be up for a few years, but gradually you would switch them over, because that way you tend to reduce the buildup of disease.
Eric,
hey.
What are you up to out here in this cool day, cool rainy damp day in Maine?
Well, I'm actually sampling native bee visitation to blueberry flowers. So you can see these wooden stakes that are situated throughout this field here. And this one is one of the closer points to a wildflower planting. And so what we're trying to do is determine if this planting affects the native bee visitation rates to the blueberry flowers.
And these wildflowers certainly aren't blooming this time of year, but it looks like you have a number of different kind of plants over here.
Yeah, well, this is a perennial, mostly perennial wildflower mix, which we planted last year in the kind of early to mid-summer. And so last August, this was full of flowers, mostly coreopsis and some gaillardia and some sunflower. So of course over the winter the flowers have died and hopefully dropped some seed, but there's also what we see now in all of these green kind of clumps are actually perennial wildflowers that will hopefully will be flowering after blueberry bloom. We formulated this mix so that they wouldn't co-flower with blueberry, because if they do, then it might draw pollinators away from the blueberry crops.
You don't want that kind of competition.
No, we don't want competition. What we want to do is enhance the native pollinator population. We don't want to compete with a crop. We want to help the crop.
So you're providing food year round, really, for the bees to be able to help them.
Yeah, that's the idea, because you can see how big this blueberry field is, and when it's blooming right now, there's lots of flowers out here for the bees, and on a nice day you'll see the bees are all over, honeybees and native bees alike. But when the crop is done flowering, there's really not many resources left. And so we're trying to fill in that gap in bloom, fill in that gap in the availability of bee food by providing other flowers later in the season. And so that's what we're hoping this will do.